It's text 44, which also happens to be the last verse in this chapter. Shri Shuka Uvacha
Shri Shuka Vacha
Pratijagraha Tat Vaham Narada Sadhu Samataha Etavan Sadhuvada Kitiksheta Ishvara Svayam Shri Shuka Vacha Pratijagraha Tatpadam Narada Sadhu Samataha Etavan Sadhuvadohi Kitiksheta Svayam
Titikshiteshvara Swayam.
Titikshiteshvara Swayam.
Titikshiteshvara Swayam.
Shri Shuka Uvacha.
Shri Shuka Vacha.
Tityagraha Tatpadam.
Pratijagraha Tadbadam.
Narada Sadhu Sammataha.
Narada Sadhu Sammata.
Etavan Sarvadohi.
Etavan Sadhuvadohi.
Titikshiteshvara Swayam.
Titikshiteshvara Swayam. Shri Shuka Vacha.
Shri Shuka Uvacha.
Pratijagraha Tadbadam.
Pratijagraha Tadpadam.
Narada Sadhu Sammata.
Narada Sadhu Sammata.
Etavan Sadhuvadohi.
Etavan Sadhuvadohi.
Titikshiteshvara Swayam.
Titikshiteshvara Swayam. Shri Shuka Uvacha.
Shri Shuka Vacha.
Pratijagraha Tadbadam.
Pratijagraha Tadbadam.
Narada Sadhu Sammata.
Narada Sadhu Sammata.
Etavan Sadhuvadohi.
Etavan Sadhuvadohi.
Titikshiteshvara Swayam.
Titikshiteshvara Swayam.
Shri Shuka Uvacha.
Shri Shuka Vacha.
Pratijagraha Tadpadam.
Pratijagraha Tadbadam.
Narada Sadhu Sammata.
Narada Sadhu Sammata.
Etavan Sadhuvadohi.
Etavan Sadhuvadohi.
Titikshiteshvara Swayam.
Titikshiteshvara Swayam.
Shri Shuka Uvacha.
Shri Shuka Vacha.
Shri Shukadeva Goswami said.
Shri Sukadeva Goswami said.
Pratijagraha.
Pratijagraha.
Accepted.
Accepted.
Tat.
Tat.
That.
That.
Badam. So be it.
So be it.
Narada.
Narada. Narada Muni.
Sadhu Sammata.
Sadhu Sammata.
Who is an approved sadhu.
Who is an approved sadhu.
Etavan.
Etavan.
This much. Sadhuvadaha.
Sadhuvadaha.
Appropriate for a saintly person.
Appropriate for a saintly person. Indeed. Titiksheta.
He may tolerate. Ishvaraha. Although able to curse Prajapati Daksha. Swayam. Himself. Shri Shukadeva Goswami continues, my dear king, since Narada Muni is an approved saintly person, when cursed by Prajapati Daksha, he replied, Tat Badam. Yes, what you have said is good, I accept this curse. He could have cursed Prajapati Daksha in return, but because he is a tolerant and merciful sadhu, he took no action. Purport, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 3:25-21. Titikshava karuni ka surida sarvade nam adyatas chatravas shantha sadhava sadhubhushanam. The symptoms of a sadhu are that he is tolerant, merciful, and friendly to all living entities. He has no enemies, he is peaceful, he abides by the scriptures, and all his characteristics are sublime. Because Narada Muni is the most elevated of sadhus, devotees, to deliver Prajapati Daksha, he silently tolerated the curse. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has taught this principle to all his devotees. Trina api sunitena taro iva savishnuna amanina manena kirtaniya sadahari. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respects to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Following the orders of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, one who preaches the glories of the Lord all over the world, or all over the universe, should be humbler than grass and more tolerant than a tree, because a preacher cannot live an easygoing life. Indeed, a preacher must face many impediments. Not only is he sometimes cursed but sometimes he must also suffer personal injury. For example, when Nityananda went to preach Krishna consciousness to the two Rogi's brothers, Jaga and Malai, they injured him and made his head bleed, but nevertheless he tolerantly delivered the two rogues who became perfect Vaishnavas. This is the duty of a preacher. Lord Jesus Christ even tolerated crucifixion. Therefore the curse against Narada was not very astonishing, and he tolerated it. Now it may be asked why Narada Muni stayed in the presence of Prajapati Daksha and tolerated all his accusations and curses. Was that for Daksha's deliverance? The answer is yes. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti says that after being insulted by Prajapati Daksha, Narada Muni should have left immediately, but he purposely stayed to hear all Daksha's strong words, so that Daksha might be relieved of his anger. Prajapati Daksha was not an ordinary man. He had accumulated the results of many pious activities. Therefore Narada Muni expected that after delivering his curse, Daksha, satisfied and freed from anger, would repent his misbehavior and thus get a chance to become Vaishnava and be delivered. When Jaga and Mali offended Lord Nityananda stood tolerantly, and therefore both brothers fell at his lotus feet and repented. Consequently, they later became perfect Vaishnavas. As in the purport of the 6th canto, 5th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Narada Muni cursed by Prajapati Daksha. Shri Shukra Uvacha Pratika Graha Tatpadam Narada Sadhu Samataha Etaman Sadhuvadu Ititikshitishvarasram. Shri Shukadeva Goswami continued, my dear king, since Narada Muni is an approved saintly person, when cursed by Prajapati Daksha, he replied, Tat Adham, yes, what you have said is good, I accept this curse. He could have cursed Prajapati Daksha in return, but because he is a tolerant and merciful sadhu, he took no action. Om Magyanatamandasya Jaksumiltam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Lankaiti Karimya Kripa Taraham Vande Sri Gurun Dinataranam Nama Om Vishnavadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namini Namaste Sarasvati Devam Gauravami Prajayani Vishisha Shunyavadi Vasavita Visatayani Vanja
Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaiva cha Tirthanam Bharubhyo Vaishnavyo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
So here we see what are the actual characteristics of a sadhu. Narada Muni's behavior is exemplary in this case, and it's actually understood that the sadhu's real the most powerful weapon the sadhu he has, by which he can even conquer Krishna, what to speak of common living entities, attract common living entities, is his good behavior. That is the most valuable asset that a saintly person he has. By good behavior, Krishna becomes deeply satisfied, and everyone also are actually impressed and conquered by his behavior. There was one case once when Srila Prabhupada was visited by a group of Indian gentlemen, and they were very angry. They came to this room and was visiting him. And Prabhupada, and then they started speaking strongly and yelling at Srila Prabhupada, and they were criticizing him heavily. You are destroying Hinduism. You are giving all these malicious Brahmin strings. You are ruining Hinduism. And Prabhupada, he simply bowed his head. And he just speak things. And not exactly afterwards, he said something like that, I'm just trying to please my spiritual master. I'm not sure if that's what he said. But by this humble behavior, he completely silenced his critics. If he even won them over, I'm not sure the exact detail, but he definitely silenced them. And I mean, he was victorious because he's a real sadhu. He doesn't get angry. He doesn't get into a big fight to defend himself. He simply humbly tolerates. And then afterwards he humbly says, I'm just, who am I? But I'm trying to satisfy my spiritual master, that's all. And they couldn't, as far as I understand, they couldn't say anything, they just had to silently walk out again. If he had acted differently, the result would also have been different. If he had started arguing, debating, according to Shastra, no, it's you're all wrong, you're fools and rascals. We know Prabhupada was not shy when necessary to use certain heavy words from the dictionary, fools, rascals. So it's not that he didn't know these words. But Prabhupada was able to be completely self-controlled. He could, whatever was appropriate for the situation, then he would, respond and react in that situation. And it's actually general instruction. When you're dealing with foolish people, don't argue. As sometimes we want to do that. Someone, there's a fool. There's so many fools. Some of us are. Some of them actually. There's so many fools, and they will immediately come and criticize and speak strong words, and they even want to get in a fight. They like to argue and debate. So an intelligent person shouldn't get into any kind of arguments. You simply avoid it. Prabhupada avoided the argument in that case. Also we see here Narada Muni avoids argument and debate. Simply tolerates. Humbly tolerates with a smile and polite words, and just that's it. And this way they actually conquer. It's actually instructed in the Mahabharata by Bhishma that first of all he advises that you should never debate with someone who's foolish or who's not qualified to debate. Debates are actually for brahmanas, those who want to actually understand a certain point. Then you can argue, you analyze an issue or a point from different angles of vision, and then after having looked at all arguments and counter arguments, you reach the qualified conclusion. So that kind of debate is desirable. Krishna is present in that kind of discussion. It's called Vada. Actually, it's mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, in the purport, 10 something, where Krishna says that amongst logicians, I'm the conclusive truth. It's called Vada. But there are different kinds of arguments, which are not, there's sometimes you see someone arguing, and actually just arguing forth and back, but they're not even sure what they're arguing about. You hear they're arguing, 5 minutes later you hear the same person's arguing, but they turn around, and he who argued for now is against, and he who was against he's for, and they're still arguing. They're just words bouncing forth and back, and this is called yalpa. It just means talk, just talk. There's another kind of argument where you are bound, I want to defeat my opponent, by all means I must defeat my opponent. This is called vitanda. But this is not what Krishna talks about, conclusive truth. He says the actual conclusive truth, that is called the vada. You simply want to understand things as they are. And this is desirable, but this can only be practiced by those who are qualified brahmanas, not brahmanas by birth or by initiation, but actually qualified brahmanas situated in the mode of goodness, where you simply, you're detached from your personal ego, you just want to understand something. Then that is highly desirable. But if you're not on that level, you're not qualified to be argued with, and therefore those who are actually intelligent, they simply, they shun this kind of debates. They don't want to get involved at all, which is the proper response. If they get involved, they get dragged down and become implicated themselves. But if they don't, if they simply, politely avoid and is acting properly according, towards the other person, not having any anger or malice toward the person, just, acting properly, he actually already defeated. It's said that someone, by that behavior, you transfer all your sinful reactions onto that person. But Daksha can be very happy that Narada has no sinful reactions that he can transfer. But he would have, otherwise, if Daksha did something like that to us, and if by some good fortune we happen to act like Narada Muni, which is probably unlikely, but if we did, we would get a great chance to transfer all our sinful reactions to him, and he would have to suffer for that. So actually be happy when there's someone who comes and wants to, criticize you or, yell at you or like that. It's a great chance to unload all your sinful reactions by being simply humble, tolerant, and going away. He gets them all. Of course, the sadhu doesn't want to unload things like that, but then again,
it's a good motivation.
Yeah, it's it works. It definitely works. They get the sinful reactions, and but here we see that Narada Muni, he's completely pure in his motivations. He's acting completely correct. And his motivation is he simply wants to help Daksha, to deliver Daksha. He helped his sons, now he wants to help him also. And therefore he tolerates, he even stays longer than he strictly speaking should have stayed. You should have seen it. Normally if he has seen that here Daksha is, and he's just completely furious, and he should have gone somewhere else. Now Muni doesn't do that. He actually comes and he hears how Daksha, he just takes a big bucket of garbage and just pours it over his head, and Muni tolerates it. Because he thinks that after having been, relieved his anger, then there's a chance he can, then I can maybe reach him, we can communicate actually on some, on a normal level. Then maybe I can, he can understand Daksha, and I can help him. That's Narada Muni's motive. It doesn't happen actually. It's one of those exceptions. It's probably the exception. We have the maxim that goes that there are no rules without exceptions. By the way, that is simply this is simply a false statement. That. I think I mentioned that it is simply a false statement, and no rules without exceptions. But as a isn't it?
Must be.
Must be.
It is.
Yeah. Why?
How else could Krishna be the supreme Lord if there's no exception for him? If there's the rule and that we're his servant, and so there's no exception. This is the illusion in the material world. We think there is, but it's not.
Not wrong. Beautiful answer.
If there's no exceptions to the rules, and there's no exception to that rule, then it means that it's not.
Yeah.
What does Prabhupada say?
He said it's just now we just been trying to sharpen everyone's logical sense. I don't know if that's anything to do with the Bible or something. I mean, then there are no rules without exceptions, but that's a rule in itself. So if that's true, then this rule has no exceptions. But then it's false, because we just found a rule that had no exceptions. So that means you got that?
Yes.
Anything are relative.
No, that's not that everything's relative. That's not. But it's just that it's a rule about rules. So if that rule is true, then it must have exceptions. So if it has an exception, then there are rules, and there's no exceptions. And if it's completely true, and there are, if there are no rules without exceptions, but then that rule has no exceptions. That is, anyway. I guess.
Makes sense.
Often you can test statements like that if they actually contain their own contradictions. It can generally conclude we're dealing with something that is fundamentally false. It's Prabhupada will point out, the also will point out, someone will say, don't listen to anyone, just follow your inner voice or something like that. Don't listen to anyone. But that means you shouldn't listen to that person who's saying that either. Don't have it, don't have a guru. Just again follow yourself. But that person is acting as a guru. So that these are actually self-contradictory statements. And it's, as soon as you have a self-contradictory statement, you can be sure it's just don't take it seriously. It sounds nice, it's just grammar. But this with the rules, you can take it as a general, rule of thumb. There are sometimes exceptions, strong rules, but also there are sometimes exceptions. So here in this case with Narada Muni, as a rule, whoever gets in touch with him becomes a pure devotee. And here we have an exception. He is actually not able to change the mind of Daksha. You see that? Daksha is a great soul, but Narada Muni is not able to make him into a completely pure devotee. Which might be of course there are also other cases. He didn't try to make Kamsa into a pure devotee. He didn't. Rikasura, also Narada Muni met Rikasura, and he instructed Rikasura not to perform pure devotional service, but to engage in satisfying Lord Shiva to get this benediction that he could crack anyone's head they touched. And so Narada Muni also see there's someone, but here with the Daksha he really tries hard, and somehow there are other fails. That's part of preaching also. Sometimes we're not successful, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. We simply try and depend upon Krishna for the results. And Narada Muni always does that, and he's generally always successful. But here there's one very rare exception. He's not able to reach into Daksha. Daksha is too covered over, a little elevated, but he's kind of too stuck in his own way of looking at things. And still, you see, Narada Muni, he's the one who comes out completely victorious in this case. He's not affected. That's what happens when one acts properly. Then one is least not affected by any reactions, doesn't get entangled, and is able to conquer Krishna. Ultimately, Krishna is conquered by this kind of excellent behavior. That's what Lalitanatha says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that or it is said in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Also, Lalitanatha talks about the protection of etiquettes, Vaishnava etiquette, proper behavior, and but it's